Hey everybody, this is Supernal11. I'm posting another video because I wanted to cover Sword Fighting 100. So this is the absolute basics of sword fighting, and there you go. It's the absolute basics of sword fighting. So before we continue, though, there's a couple of things that are going to be a little bit different depending. One of the things is that there is a difference, and actually I'll be right back. There's another tool I need to get. Okay, sorry about that. So, first of all, there's a couple of things you need to ask yourself before you do this, or before you start talking about what are the good, what are the bads, like about sword fighting. And one of the things is what type of weapon are you using? There's a lot of different kinds. You have swords, you have axes, you have maces, you have clubs, you have long swords, you have spears. There's a lot of different weapons that can each do different things depending. And so how you fight is going to be a little bit different depending on if you use a long sword, if you use a straight sword, if you use a curved blade. It's all going to be a little bit different. So if you're going to fight, first of all, I'm going to cover the absolute basics. And for that purpose, I'm actually going to be using this because it's small and you can easily see what I'm doing with it. So, if you are doing sword fighting, one of the most basic things you can learn is the tip of your sword is a barrier. Well, what does that mean? That means if I'm fighting you, one of the most default positions to do is this. This is one of the most basics. The reason for that is, remember what I said, the tip of your sword is a barrier. If I'm doing this, I'm making it so my opponent has to attack my sword to get it out of the way so then they can come and hit me. So that is one thing. Pay attention to the tip, because if you don't, you're setting yourself up for a world of hurt later, for a lot of disappointment later. Obvious joke is obvious. So keep your sword between you and your opponent. There you go. If you want them to back up, keep the tip more towards them. If you want them to come in closer, do something like this, or like this, or let it drop and just do that. So there's a couple of different things, and I'm actually going to tilt this down a little bit. There we go. So even down here, actually this, just keeping it like this, but down here, is actually one of my favorite positions, like opening stances. But, so moving on, the next thing is, no matter what your opponent is using, it doesn't matter if they're using a sword, it doesn't matter if they're using a spear, it doesn't matter if they're using a bow and arrow. What matters is your opponent has a set amount of areas they can attack you. One, this is actually covered in Rurouni Kenshin as well, or Samurai X, but the first area is straight down into the head. So the strike is like so. The second strike is here. The third is here, so shoulders. 4 and 5 are here and here. 6 and 7 are like so and like so. So basically the legs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah. Okay. The strike 8 is directly up the center. So for us, for girls, and guys, I guess, it's straight up the groin and up the center. And then the last is a thrust into the torso. Of course, you can also thrust into the leg or something like that, but these are the only areas an opponent can attack. So if you're on your own, one of the things I would recommend is it uses a technique called shadow boxing, or this is the technique I prefer. Pretend you are facing somebody that is your exact build. Same height, same distribution, same weapon. Pretend you are fighting someone that looks exactly like you, and pretend that they are attacking you. So the easiest strike to pretend is this one, because you're coming straight down the middle. Still kind of sick. So, if I'm pretending I'm facing somebody, I pretend they're attacking, move to block. Block it. But there are multiple ways you can block, and the more experienced the fighter, the more blocking potentials you have. So, I could do this. But I could also do this, I could do this, and just knock it aside. I could do that, I could do this, I can actually do this. So there's multiple ways to block, but just pretend you are blocking. And if you're attacking, and to work on your attacks, do the exact same thing. Pretend you are facing somebody that is the exact same build as you, and head, shoulders, shoulders, middle, middle, leg, leg, straight up the center, thrust, and so on. However, these are done with a straight blade. My strikes will be different if I am using, per se, this, which I would actually say this is a longsword. So, by comparison, you can actually see this one is quite a bit longer. So my strikes are going to be a little bit different because I have to account for that longer blade, and I have a longer handle. So I don't want to catch myself with it. But it's also going to change depending on what weapon you have. This is more of a one-handed sword. I don't know why my webcam is like randomly losing focus like that. But, so it does change. And before we get into the, well, katanas suck, or katanas are the best thing ever, I don't tolerate those comments, and I will block people that do so, because this is a weapon. Yes, this is true. So is this. Yes, I can kill someone a lot easier with this. I can kill someone just as effectively with this. Because what makes a tool dangerous, this is a tool. And what makes this a horribly lethal weapon is not, how sharp is the blade? Or, what is the density of carbon in the blade? What makes this a deadly tool is the fighter wielding it. It doesn't matter what it's made out of. It doesn't matter if it's super high quality or not. What matters is, and Japanese sword masters, they are sword masters. They are just as deadly with a stick as they are with a hand-forged katana. It doesn't matter. And so when you choose, but katana and how they are used, there is history behind this sword, behind these swords. This was a $50 one I got to practice sharpening because I wanted to learn how to actually sharpen properly. And I didn't want to ruin an actual, expensive katana, so I got this. But there is history on how these handle, and that history helped shape Japanese sword fighters into becoming the masters that they are. Are they worse than a European knight? I don't know. Murder is kind of illegal now, so we don't really know. Death matches are kind of illegal, so we will never know. That doesn't matter, though. A weapon is a weapon. Is it slightly better? Doesn't matter. It's a weapon. But more importantly, how I use this is going to be different than how I use, let me put the sheet down, how I use this. Why? Because this is a curved blade. I actually had a discussion about people that said, oh, katanas there's such rumors about them being master draw weapons and draw cuts, which it's not true. That person never held a katana before. Because when a blade is curved, you can actually test this when you have a straight weapon and you push it against your arm, it kind of feels weaker. With a curved blade, as you draw, the curve of the blade, that actually hurt, is actually accentuated. The power of the cut is not reduced at all. It's actually amplified. And so with a straight sword, yeah, you're going to get a deeper cut as you press inward, but you're not going to get as deep as a cut as a weapon that is designed for that cut, like a katana is, like a scimitar is. And so with this weapon, or with a straight sword, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to chop. I'm trying to hit, and I'm using the weight of my sword to cut through, and my brute strength. I'm trying to chop. This is more of an axe-style weapon, or it's an axe-style mentality. I'm trying to cut and hack off. You don't always have to, and you can do disabling strikes, you can do this. I'm not saying this is primarily a limiting tool, or I'm not saying all straight swords are primarily a one-handed tool. What I am saying, though, is straight swords are designed to more take the weight of the weapon in mind when they strike, and it's that chop that allows them to bite deep. A katana actually does not have as a pronounced curve as some other swords. So their curve, when they strike, their curve, they actually have a bit of both worlds, I think. They do have the aspect of the chop, where I am cutting in, and the weight of the katana helps do that. But I can get just as deep of a bite if I do this and do that, as I would if I did this and then did that. What bites deep is the leverage that applies force along the end of the blade, which bites deeper and deeper the further along it slides. But, so, the shape of your sword matters. So a curved sword, if I'm doing those strikes, head, shoulder, shoulder, middle, middle, as you saw, it was a little bit different using a katana, and that's because I was taking into account the katana's different shape. And I also will say, a katana is not my preferred weapon style. I was formerly trained in katana use, but not very long. So I am not a master of the weapon by any means. However, I have fought someone that is, and this is one of the deadliest weapons I have ever had the misfortune to fight against, and it's scary. It's scary to fight someone who has mastered this weapon, not just because of the katana's prowess and not just because of its sharpness, but because because of its lightness and its two-handed shape. It's very easy to control the katana and to change the angle of your strikes on the flick of a switch. There was actually one point where I thought somebody was coming down at my head, and so we were fighting, and he was coming down, so I brought my sword up to try to do this, and he actually changed the angle of his strike, so it was coming down like here, and he somehow bent his sword and then did this. He didn't actually touch me. What he did was, as I was coming up to do here, he stepped in and did that, and his sword actually hit here and stopped just short of touching me. And I was dead. I couldn't even react. The blow was so fast. So the shape of your weapon matters. That's what I was trying to get into about that. Sorry, I got a little technical. The shape of your weapon matters, though. So then we come into, well, how can I practice safely? Get a stick. There are lots of sticks. Beat them until you find one that doesn't break as easily. Use that until it breaks, and then get more. However, sticks, if you're fighting somebody who's with you, these hurt a lot. They do. So, and of course, a metal weapon is going to hurt a hell of a lot more. So, foam. And for those of you that watch the Kalamazoo, yes, this is the Kalamazoo Bellator 2. But impact foam. It's not pleasant to be hit by this, but I can be hit by this and I can keep fighting. I get hit by that the same way hard as I was doing this. I'm not going to want to use this hand for a while. But, so you do sort of have... So, you do sort of have issues with that. So you do have impact. There's foam. There's latex weapons as well that you can use. And if you're going to be doing practicing, if you do want to pick it up, there are 3 practices you have to do in order to be a successful sword fighter. There are 3. First of all, you have to practice impact training. And no, I don't mean go and find a tree and beat it up. The tree doesn't deserve it, and neither does your training stick. But I mean, you have to be able to, there's a difference between doing an overhand strike like so, and then stopping, and doing an overhand strike against a solid object that will not give, and your sword is forced to stop against. So you have to do impact training. You have to be used to hitting something solid that is going to repel your strike. Training 2, form training, or technique training. And what this is... Now, that was really sloppy. So, there we go. So this is the strike that works best for me one-handed. Practice the technique. One of the black belts that trained me said, with technique comes both speed and power. The more you get the technique correct, the stronger and the faster you will be able to use that technique. So that's kind of like, that's why you need to do technique training, because you need to make sure you're able to do the attack and the blocks that you want to be able to do like that, and do them well. Because if you do a block poorly, like if someone does a leg attack and I do this, like I do this to block it, if I do this, what's going to happen is if the opponent is stronger than I am, this is going to flip out of my hand completely. And so the difference between doing that and doing that. This is a much stronger block. And so that is a better block that you want to do. So technique does matter. But there's a third thing, a third type of practice you have to do. And that is sparring practice. And I keep looking at the picture to make sure I'm actually doing this correctly, the strikes correctly. But is sparring practice. You have to be able to practice against someone else. It doesn't matter who, it doesn't matter how skilled they are, but you have to have somebody that you can practice against and that you can grow with to become a better fighter. Because if you don't, you will suffer for it. You will not. There are things you will teach yourself to do that are very bad habits and will end up costing you in the long run, that you'll have to unlearn, which is a lot harder than learning them. Like I was just saying, doing a down block by rotating your wrist this way is a terrible idea. But catching it with the back, but that extra rotation, just doing this. But you wouldn't know that this way is the better block because this way feels better. It's smoother, it's faster, it feels okay. But doing this, it takes a little bit longer, but it's a much more solid block. And you won't know that unless you actually practice that block against an opponent trying to hit you. So those are the 3 aspects of the types of training that you need to do to be a successful fighter. And then on top of that, there are that's basically it. Just do shadow boxing. Try to find someone you can practice with. Pool money to get tools if you want. And generally have fun. If you're doing it because you like it, great. That's awesome. That's why you should be doing it. If you're doing it just because I'm lazy or I'm bored, I didn't have anything else to do, I really don't want to be here, but my friend is here, so I kind of have to be, probably not the best thing for you to do, to try to get into, because this is hard work. The only thing that limits in the martial arts, not just sword play, but hand-to-hand as well, is how much time and energy you are willing to put into it. That limits how far you can grow. You put the time in, you'll be a strong fighter. You don't put the time in, you won't be. And so having that drive is very important. But that's also the basics of sword fighting. It doesn't matter if you have a curved sword. It doesn't matter if you have a one-handed sword, a short sword, a long sword, a bastard sword, a two-handed sword. The basics aren't really going to change all that much. However, in a more advanced setting, probably will. But, so, that has been Swordfighting 100, just the very basics. You should have all the tools you need to make a good starting with this. Just practice, have fun, try to have somebody to spar with so you can practice against someone else safely. Find out what works and develop your own unique style. So, anyways, thanks for watching, guys. I will see you guys in the next episode. I'm actually working on Dark Souls 2, or Dark Souls 1 still, so that is recording. It's not recording, but I'm working on it. So that's almost actually done, and then I recorded Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles, so that'll be up soon, which I'm really excited about that. I'm going to try to get it all up on Saturday. And that's all there you go. That's it, I think. So, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next episode.